is with a dramatic lead over GOP challenger Donald Trump. So what should we take from these polls as we look for an indication on how the candidates are faring going into the November election? Joining us on Skype to discuss that is polling expert John Johnson with Edgeworth Economics and the author of the book, Everydata.
There is something, obviously, in these poll numbers that is a sort of a change, something that sort of seems to be some movement. First, the thing that I think about is not only are the numbers sort of moving large in terms of, you're seeing some bigger magnitude numbers, but now they're outside of what we call the margin of error. So as before, so much of this race was tied and we really couldn't statistically see a difference. Now, we think there actually is some difference reflected in these numbers that is definitely leaning towards Hillary Clinton. A few notes of caution, though. It is August, and we are still sort of early. We're going to go into a period here where generally there may not be a lot of movement the next few weeks as people just don't pay attention. So we're still pretty early in the election process. We're about, 95 days or so out, so we just have to be a little bit careful about over-interpreting them. But there is definitely, at this point, the best assessment of the race is definitely in favor of Hillary Clinton.
Let's talk history for a second. And have we seen a candidate with this much of a lead in the polls at this point in a presidential race?
I believe John Kerry was up by about this much in July before his election with George W. Bush in 2004, and we know that Bush ended up winning. So it is a little unusual, though, after the conventions, and generally when you see someone whose convention is second and they get this big of a bounce, they've won in the last 4 times in elections where this has occurred. So, it is a good sign for Clinton supporters, but again, we just have to be a little bit cautious. There's still a pretty long race to go.
All right, and the state polls tell us a lot as well. You've looked at a few of those. Talk about that.
At the end of the day, this is about the Electoral College, and so which direction is this going to go? There's about 10 states that usually we sort of focus in on. The Democrats, just because of shifting demographics, sort of start with an advantage there. The state polls this week have been also reflecting the same as we see in the national. Pennsylvania, even Georgia in play, which is interesting. Really, the 2 states where at least it's somewhat still close is North Carolina, which is kind of important, and Nevada. But if you really want a good sense of where do the candidates think they have to be, you can just look at the upcoming travel schedules for the candidates. Donald Trump going to be in Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, New Hampshire. Hillary Clinton, a little bit broader. She's going to Michigan and Wisconsin. She's got multiple trips to Michigan coming up, Georgia as well, and Pennsylvania. So we're going to see this constant drumbeat. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, you'll see a lot of activity there. But right now the state polls are reflecting the very same type of trend we've seen in the national polls overall.
When it comes to state and national polls, are we seeing mostly just the 2 big party candidates, or are we starting to see the third party candidates being added in?
They are asking about them, and that is sort of an interesting dynamic to really watch for over the next several weeks. Gary Johnson, Jill Stein are being added, or usually added as an add-on question. There have been polls that have had, Gary Johnson as high as 12%. Sort of the magic number they're looking for is 15%, because that's when they can get into the debates. It's not that these independents candidates, when they're added in, are really drawing support away in a method that is changing the relative magnitude of the comparison between Trump and Clinton. They are taking votes in some of these polls. It's not clear that they're taking them from one or the other in such a magnitude that it's dramatically changing the dynamic of the race.
That's John Johnson. He's